night for Wisconsin Veterans Museum's every other month event, movie discussion night. Tonight we are looking at the 2003 film Master and Commander: Far Side of the World. This film was directed by Peter Weir, who you might remember from the Truman Show, Dead Poets Society, and Gallipoli. Cinematography was done by Russell Boyd, who was also part of the Gallipoli crew doing cinematography there as well. Soldier Story, he's also responsible for that one as well. That's a movie that we've watched here on our movie discussion nights. And I was always telling Chris earlier that these two, Peter Weir and Russell Boyd, they've done 6 movies together. And so when you have a director and a cinematographer who partner up like that, quite often you can expect a pretty good product. And that's what we have here tonight with Master and Commander, at least I think so. This movie does star Russell Crowe, who you might remember from Gladiator, Academy Award winner as Best Actor for Gladiator. Also stars Paul Bettany as Stephen Maudlin, the doctor. And you might have seen him in Knight's Tale. If you have not seen Knight's Tale, I recommend it. It's a good, Friday night, Saturday night movie, kind of lighthearted. Paul Bettany plays Geoffrey Chaucer in that, which is a fun character for him. The film also stars James D'Arcy and Billy Boyd, of course, who you've seen from The Lord of the Rings, at least if you are anywhere near being a regular human on the planet Earth, you've at least seen maybe some of The Lord of the Rings. Billy Boyd features in all 3 of those films, fantastically, I might say. Principal photography for this film was done between June and November of 2002, mostly in the Baja Studios in Mexico, where they basically recreated a 19th century fighting ship. Like the one you see in the film. They put it on a gimbal so they can move it up and down and have it sway as they needed it. Most of the photography was done there. They did do some photography out at sea, but not very much. And then also, of course, some photography was done in the Galapagos Islands. This is the first non-documentary film to film in the Galapagos Islands. So they have that going to their credit as well. This film was produced and distributed by 20th Century Fox with a release date of November 14th of 2003. It had an initial budget of $150 million, box office receipts totaling $211.6 million. So it did make some money, although it wasn't really seen as a fantastic film during the time. The critics liked it, but it came out just a couple months after the very first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And so I think everybody was really enamored with that. And this film definitely is not Pirates of the Caribbean. So I think maybe it put a little bit of a taint on its opening, or at least maybe not its opening, but at least its reception here in the U.S. It still was received well. Like I said, critics loved it. It was, wonderfully done. It did receive 10 Oscar nominations: Best Cinematography, Best Sound Mix or Sound Editing, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Art, Best Costumes, Best Editing, Best Makeup, and Best Visual Effects. Can anybody guess 2 awards that it won for?
Special effects.
Musical score?
No, it went for cinematography. So congratulations to Russell Boyd for that one. And it also went for sound as well. And I do have a question about sound toward the end of our questions here. So yeah, 10 Oscar nominations. It did win 2. And then briefly, just like we start every event, we'll just go around the room real quick and see what everybody thought of the film. Chris, you're first on my lineup as usual. We'll start with you.
I'm still trying to sort out my feelings about it.
Okay, you can leave the meeting right now.
Okay. I was impressed with many parts of it, but there were some things that just didn't quite gel for me.
Okay.
I mean, one of the things that struck me was after all the battle scenes, after the various encounters, the ships being blown apart and all kinds of things, they still got their cello and their violin intact. And I'm trying to figure out how in the world, in the midst of all this, those things survive. It was little things like that that kind of threw me off on it. I thought the characterizations were really well done. And overall, I really got a sense out of it of what it was probably like on those ships at that in that era. I mean, sure. It kind of reminded me of the time I visited. I got a tour of a submarine, and it was so crowded, so small. And I just wondered as I was watching the movie, when they're carrying the live animals, how they're carrying all the feed for the live animals, how they're all the stuff that they had to store on there, plus all the people. I just couldn't imagine being stuck on one of those things for, months and months at a time.
Or longer.
Yeah.
Lisa, what did you think of the film?
I really liked it. I was like with Chris, there's things that have to be realistic or it loses me, but there were things like I kind of figured it after a bit, it was the time period. There was more times passing than what I realized. Like,
Yeah.
so like when his eye was hurt and then all of a sudden the next scene his eye is better and the guy with the head injury and then it's like not wrapped anymore and you're like, so I think there was more time passage than what I realized in the beginning, but I enjoyed the movie.
Excellent. Jose, how about you?
I really like the movie because not just of the presence of the protagonist and also the doctor, but the time that other characters have. The one that jumps from the boat because of the ship, because of all the crew having all the crew against him. The little young fellow that loses his arm, but he has a courageous action during the confrontation. I think that every character had his time in this movie, and also the twist plot of the insect, that is used for conveying how to say, a trap to the other ship.
Yeah. Trap. Yep. And Steve, finally, how did you like the film?
I don't think I saw it in the theaters, but I think I probably did within, once it hit, something on cable. So, it wasn't a new watch for me, but I've watched it a bunch of times in the past, and it's really one of my favorites. So
excellent.
I actually had bought the DVD, got it delivered, and then got the email that, oh, we're watching, Master and Commander, and was like, oh,
very fortuitous,
just right. Yes.
I want to add something because I don't watch a lot of movies and then there's scenes where things are going on. It always I get real nervous that I'm missing things that I don't understand, like in the beginning. So they start out and I feel like I'm missing. So for somebody like me, it would do a lot better to watch it another time because this was my first time watching it.
Lisa, that's one of the great things about film is that you can go back and revisit it as often as you want. You don't have to wrap your head around the whole thing initially, as long as you're entertained and drawn in, whether that's through the characters, the storyline, the cinema, whatever it is, as long as something draws you in, that's the wonderful thing about film. Same way with books too. It's something that you can always go back and revisit. And even for somebody who's probably like me, I've watched this film probably well over 100 times. And I still, putting my notes together for tonight, there's still things that I was missing that, I had obviously watched before, but now that I'm actually, going into the details, oh, wow, I never even realized that. Or fantastic folks like you pointing things out that I miss all the time. You guys are really good at that. So, that's the great thing about films is you can always go back and revisit it and watch it and just fall in love with it again. The important thing though is that first time. If it doesn't resonate with you, if it doesn't click or draw you in immediately, the same thing with me. I'm probably not going to go back and give it a second shot unless everybody says, oh, you really need to go back and try it again. But this is one of those films that just, it doesn't need any more invitation. You're more than welcome to come back every time. Chris, I meant to ask as well, has anybody read the books? This film is based on a series of books by Patrick O'Brian. And I was just curious if anybody's read those books. No? Okay. No, you don't have to read the books to get a good grasp of the story. This movie is based, it's taken pieces of the first two books that Patrick O'Brian did and kind of combining them together. They did a really good job with the adaptation, and then being able to combine two different stories, making it one plausible, realistic, moving adventure. I thought they did a really good job. If you ever get a chance to go and read the Patrick O'Brian books, I highly recommend it. At least the first couple. I think there's like 15 or 20 in the series. I'm sure maybe it starts to get a little old once you get into book 17, but the first two are fantastic, and you'll see, little bits and pieces from the film all throughout. Chris, you mentioned at the very beginning about how this really gives a sense of what it was like to be on those ships, particularly the opening scene before any dialogue happens. The crew's waking up early in the morning. You see the ship change on the masts. People are starting to move about. Killick's collecting eggs from the chicken coop. Did you think that just the way they set the tone, yes, it really gives you a sense of what it's like to be on this ship, but did it set the tone for the rest of the movie really well? Or was that scene just kind of like an explanation or a visualization of what it's like, and the rest of the movie was something different?
I thought it set the tone. I thought it set a mood, and the movie followed through on that really well, I thought. I mean, you get a sense. I really had a sense, particularly as you're watching the crew work the sails and so on, about what a massive operation just one ship was, just to keep it going, to make it work. So I thought the opening scene, showing some of the mundane aspects of it before they get up on the deck, and really have to start making the ship work. It created kind of a flow to the whole thing, I thought.
I would agree. Anybody else got any thoughts on that?
Well, I thought it really just kind of pointed out that it wasn't just a ship, it was their home. That was kind of the big thing that really was like, oh, so they've got chickens, they've got livestock, they've got, everybody's sleeping under, they show everybody in their hammocks down below.
Didn't those look so comfortable?
Oh yeah. but yeah, it was more than just a ship to them. It was definitely, that was their home.
Yeah, and that's actually a great point to bring up, Steve, because even Russell Crowe says it later on in the film. He goes, and I can't remember the exact quote, but he says something to the effect of, when we are on the far side of the world, this ship is England. This is our home. This is our land right here. And so, yeah, that's an excellent point to bring up. It's not just showing, like Chris said, the start of the day, all the different things that you see on the ship. This is showing you that this is, that's a great point. This is their plot of land. This is England on the sea, going wherever it chooses. Well, at least it's trying to, if it weren't for the French and their devastating ship, the Acheron, which they meet very early in the movie, right away, as Midshipman Hallam is on watch. He's officer of the deck, and he sees this shape briefly in the clouds for just a second. And then he waffles and vacillates and just doesn't come to a complete decision. And I'm curious, this is all, we're not going to see this play out in the film, but I was just wondering, was his indecision making, is that what caused the major damage and carnage from the Acheron in that opening scene? Or do you think that was going to happen anyway? Even if they were beat to quarters, even if they were ready to go?
I think it was going to happen no matter what. I mean, the Acheron was hidden in the fog bank. I think they were just waiting to get a good enough view so that they could actually hit the ship. I mean, when the initial sighting happened, it was still early, so it was before 6. It was before 6 a.m. Because I remember that they hit 6 bells. That was their mark there, and that's what triggered the actual attack. Was that it wasn't just the visual; it was the sound. So they were thinking that I think the Acheron was just sitting there waiting for just the right time, the right light, and hoping for, possibly a shift change or something like that to make the attack happen.
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I think that it was like the time of day, the fog, it was just, kind of the whole situation was kind of stealth how it just kind of came into being. But I do think it set up the lack of confidence in Holcomb for the rest of the movie.
Sure, it absolutely did. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I would even argue that maybe, had, he made a decision right away, got the whole ship alerted, brought everybody on deck, maybe the carnage would have been even worse. Probably as it was, there was probably a good deal of men still below. When they initially got fired upon, had they been on alert and everybody been, at their positions or at their quarters, maybe it would have been worse. Who knows? Speaking of the Acheron and this first battle sequence, they talk about after the battle, Stephen and Captain Aubrey are talking, and he goes, God, how did they come upon our position after we've been sailing for 2 weeks? And Stephen says, well, they have their spies in France just like we have in England, or other way around rather. But still, how does a ship like that, after thousands of miles at sea, how are you able to track something down to such a precise moment? I still don't understand how that was even possible. The Atlantic is enormous, nowhere near as big as the Pacific, of course, but still, how do you come on their exact position in the middle of the night like that and then wait for the sun to come up so you can just blast the hell out of it?
I was thinking the same thing because I was like, now just even a lake up in northern Minnesota where fish, it used to be like people would look at the corner of the island with a rock and line it up to where you threw off your little marker to come back around to that reef. And now everybody's on the lake with their GPS trackers and everything. So, but there are like, I don't know the words for it, current streams and such that are followed in the seas that even if you look at maps from way back when, it looks like the ships kind of all took those paths.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Absolutely correct. That is a very good point. And maybe there is a city or a port, that everybody, if you're coming from Europe, that's the first port you hit after you cross the Atlantic to re-up your water, re-up your food. And maybe they were just sitting right outside of there waiting for them to come through. Who knows? But still, it was a pretty good piece of navigation by the Acheron, caught them totally unawares and blasted them to smithereens. My goodness, I cannot, I was on a tank in the middle of Iraq. I can't imagine a ship just unloading cannon after cannon like that and just wood splinters everywhere. And oh man, no, thank you. I'm much happier with the modern warfare. If I have to be in warfare, I'll take the modern approach. So
I was going to say that was one of the things that struck me about the film was how much how many cannonballs they were firing off. I was thinking, how much of a store do you have of those things?
Hundreds.
Yeah,
Especially a ship of war.
Yeah, well, I was trying to figure out where the space was on that after all the other things that they had to store as well.
But working at the museum and granted, I don't work with cannonballs every day, but I do get to work with cannonballs occasionally and seeing how they're stacked. You could stack a couple hundred cannonballs up against the side of the hull in racks, and it takes up no more space than that. And you could have a whole wall of just cannonballs. And then obviously there's probably some sort of, I don't know what you would call it, but somebody's got to, be in charge of all that, dishing them out to the different cannon crews, making sure, at the end of the movie, they were getting the rust and everything off of it. I'm sure that there's somebody devoted just to that, or probably a couple people, and the maintenance of the cannons themselves. Or maybe it's just the cannon crews, but yeah, you could stack a lot of cannonballs in a ship very easily. It's kind of surprising when you actually watch something like this and you see how many are being fired. Hundreds.
Would have been interesting if in the movie they had showed how those how cannonballs were stacked.
Yeah,
just a little shot of that. I think that might have made it clearer why you could get so many cannonballs into a ship with everything else that they had to have.
I mean, I would agree. It would have been nice to see something like that, and maybe they even filmed something like that and cut it simply because they're looking at time. But The surprise gets absolutely wasted by the Acheron in their first meeting, and Captain Aubrey decides to not return to England. He's going to refit at sea. He finds some shoals to basically park his ship in. Lisa, this kind of speaks to your point where you're talking about, the passing of time through the movie. Within a couple minutes, probably weeks have gone by. I imagine it took them it had to have been at least a couple weeks to get that ship repaired after that first engagement with the Acheron. But why does Aubrey decide to refit at sea? After he has already been smoked by this French ship, he has doubts to his ship being able to defeat it. This is before he sees the model and knows what it's really made of, but he's still having doubts. He's seeing his cannonballs bounce off of it. They just absolutely decimate him because they were lying in wait. Why doesn't he go back to England? Get a bigger ship.
The feeling from the doctor, his friend, was that he was becoming irrational, that he was kind of becoming
a little later, yeah. But I don't think that was necessarily the case after this initial engagement. It certainly becomes clear later, though.
It was beginning, though, because people were, raising their eyebrows like, are you sure we should be doing this? So,
especially the sailing master.
yeah. So it was beginning a bit.
Well, basically, I thought he said it was duty. That they had to get it. They had to get the Acheron before it reached the Pacific, and would basically be lost forever. As far as he was concerned, I mean, because the Pacific, obviously, as you said, so much bigger than the Atlantic. And I just thought right at that point, he's one of those officers who basically says duty above all, and he saw that as his duty. He had his orders, and he was going to follow them, come hell or high water, literally high water.
And he basically outright says it later on in the film. I'm gonna grind whatever grist the mill requires to get this done.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the big thing is that the time involved. I mean, we're not, we're thinking, go from Brazil to the United Kingdom. Oh, I'll just get on a plane. They'll, and get there tomorrow. It was months to get back to England to refit. If they went to a port in the Barbados or the Bahamas or something like that, maybe that would be, maybe that'd cut a month off of it. But I mean, literally, yeah. I mean, the time involved to get back to England would have there'd been no chance to catch up to the, it'd basically be, well, another ship's got to take care of this because there's no way we can.
Yeah, it's a little difficult.
Literally wouldn't be able to.
It's a little difficult watching things like this with our modern perspective, isn't it? You're right. It's not a day's trip. It's not even a week's trip. It's multiple weeks. And that's if everything goes well, which we all know. Once you step right into combat, plans right out the door and everything goes to pot.
I wanted to add this with Chris's comment on the cannonballs. I was wondering where they were storing all the material for new masts.
Yeah.
For new masts. So each ship like that did carry an extra main mast, and then smaller masts. Once again, you're just talking about basically a whittled down tree. All the branches taken off of it. It's very long, but it's not.
I'm sorry, the sail. The sail.
Oh, the sail.
Because they did the decoy. They did the one that they had to cut it away. That time it was like dragon, and they had to cut it away, and they did the decoy and stuff. That I was like, where do they get all this material for the sails?
Yeah, they definitely would have carried extra canvas as well, just for that occasion. They get a mast shot away or something like that, one of their sails shot away, and they also carried a person on board who specifically his only job was to be able to sew and make sure that those sails were always in working order. And master of the rigging or something like that. I can't remember what the official title was. This is stuff that I learned when I worked for the Navy. Not that I was in the Navy, but I did work for them as a civilian. But yeah, they would definitely carry, a ton of cannonballs. They would carry extra masts if they needed, or if they needed to replace them, and then certainly canvas for sails was absolutely essential. Maybe probably just as essential as food and water. I mean, those three things, you know, if you're a fighting ship, you got to be able to move and communicate. Or, I'm sorry, move and shoot, not so much communicate. And if you can't do that, you're not a fighting ship. And if you're not a fighting ship, you might as well just go and get oil and truck it back and forth hunting whales. So they get refitted, and Captain Aubrey is back in action. And what do you know? The Acheron sneaks right up on them again. This time in the middle of the night, right on their tail. Who is this French captain? Where does he have still storing his GPS at? To be able to just come on these guys whenever at will. That's the only part of the movie maybe that I kind of
they kind of speculate. They're kind of confused about it too, but they were assuming that, you know, he's back in some inlet and just waiting for anything to pop by, and he sees a sail and he's out after it. So it just happened that since they might have been the only ship that was out chasing for him.
Well, the Acheron certainly was out there looking for English whalers. That's made very clear later on in the movie. So, you know, maybe you're right. Maybe it was just happenstance. And yeah, maybe he was just in a little inlet. And it's just Captain Aubrey's luck. Twice in a row, he gets this guy.
Well, there was this one exchange in there where I think Aubrey says, how did they find us? Or maybe it was the doc. They're having a conversation, and it says, how could they, how were we chasing them? And he turns around and says, maybe they were chasing us.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite lines in the film, Chris. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that does kind of turn the whole movie on its head a little bit, doesn't it? You know, you walk into this film, the first 20 minutes, this English ship is chasing this French ship. And actually, maybe that's not the case at all. Maybe the French ship is starting to chase the English ship. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. See, that's why I like talking to you folks here about movies, because you just bring up stuff I don't think about.
I can't remember your questions, but then at the end too, it flips back around when they are after him, and then the doctor says, "Well, you are the predator."
Oh yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of going back and forth.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Lisa. I forgot about that line as well. 34. We only have about 25 minutes left. I'm going to try to get through most of my questions here. So after the surprise is discovered for the second time, it's early in the morning, and the Acheron is well behind them. They do have a chance to run. But what is Captain Aubrey's demeanor when he sees this ship behind him for a second time? He's clearly not happy, but who's he not happy with, himself or the French?
He seems not happy with himself. It's almost that, what, fool me once, shame on you. Yeah,
fool me twice, shame on me, right? Yeah.
Well, he actually says that. He says, "You got me twice. It's not gonna happen a third time."
Right.
So he says.
And what's that, Chris?
So he says.
So he says, right. And so as they're running, they're trying to outrun. You know, he says, we must survive this day. We'll put out our pocket handkerchiefs if we have to. We just need to sail as fast as we can and make sure we stay away from them until night falls. And then there's a great scene where it's noon almost, because the kids, the little midshipmen, announce noon. They're having their sextant class. And one of the midshipmen says something to the effect of, you know, it's looking really good. You know, we could probably get away from them. And Captain Aubrey tells these midshipmen, he says, touch wood, scratch a stay, turn 3 times. What in the world does that mean? Any guesses? This is one of the things that I learned. First of all, I didn't have the line right when I was saying it in my head. You know, all the times I've seen it, I thought he was saying something else altogether. I actually had to look it up though and correct myself. Touch wood, scratch a stay, turn 3 times. And then the kids turn and may the Lord save and preserve us.
Yeah, it just felt like a ritual, like a rub a rabbit's foot or something, you know.
More to the point, Lisa, knock on wood is the original term for knock on wood. Fortunately, we've shortened it over the years. I can't imagine every time anybody had to say knock on wood, they would actually say touch wood, scratch a stay, turn 3 times, and everybody in the office turns around 3 times and says, may the Lord save and preserve us. That would be an awfully funny scene in my office anyway, to see that. But yeah, that was the original term for knock on wood, basically. Somebody just got tired of saying all that stuff, and they said, what if we just knock on wood?
What I thought was interesting in that scene was, as he said it, there was no hesitation in them doing it. So it was clearly something that they were totally familiar with.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was, it's just like, things that we do nowadays that nobody even bats an eyelash at. Same thing back then.
I don't
Lisa?
want to, but I wanted to ask Jose if there was a idiom that they use that's the same, that in the language that was the same as knock on wood.
Did you catch that, Jose? Jose, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here, but I don't know what to answer.
You don't know what knock
So,
on wood.
so well, at least in English, most English-speaking countries anyway, we have a saying, if somebody says something that you hope comes true, you say knock on wood.
Yeah, we have the same. I think it's a word habit to say that, to knock on wood 3 times.
Oh, so you say knock on wood 3 times? Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
When you don't want somebody something you tell, it might happen.
Okay, so they still have the 3 times part. We've dropped that altogether. So at least Jose is staying a little more true to the original idiom or phrase, whereas we just dropped everything. We just knock wood. Sometimes our head, usually. And then this kind of starts speaking to the rest of the movie, because we start seeing these. I'm sure they already believed them, but we start seeing these themes of superstition start to come through. We see that with the Jonas label that they give Midshipman Hallam. We see it with the albatross that's flying around. And I asked the question: do these types of superstitions, do they go from harmless to deadly? Are they always just kind of harmless? I mean, they're just superstitions. They don't really, theoretically, they don't really hold sway in things that happen. They're just things that we attribute to, whatever bad luck we're having. But what did you think of these superstitions coming to play throughout the film?
Well, it certainly became harmful to Hallam. The idea that
but did he let it though?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, his indecision led to the disrespect, but being a Jonah, I think, is more than just disrespect. There's a notion that somehow you are actively bringing harm to everybody around you. And
Cursed.
yeah, I mean, it all traces back. I mean, since they were in that period, they were heavily invested in the Bible and well versed in it, so they were familiar with the Jonah events in the Bible, and so they were projecting that onto him. But I don't know that being indecisive necessarily leads you to being a Jonah, and I think that's where the superstition came in that harmed him and basically bullied him into committing suicide.
And then it followed up with that is so they're sitting there dry as a bone, can't go anywhere, no wind, and as soon as he's doing the memorial service for him and looks up and there's wind in the sail. So as soon as he's gone, they get wind and rain. So it's like the curse was gone. So it kind of played into that.
And then did anybody pick up on the albatross as well? Rime of the Ancient Mariner?
Right.
Anybody make that connection? I don't know. I'm just a big Iron Maiden
Yeah.
fan, so I just, I listen to that song a gazillion times. That's the only reason I really know anything about that. But yeah, the albatross lays around his neck. Doom comes to the ship.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But these themes of superstition do keep coming through every so often in the movie, and I just thought that was kind of interesting that they worked that in there. I want to talk real quick. I'm going to skip ahead a couple questions. We are starting to run a little low on time, and I want to make sure I get all my questions in. The scene where they are chasing the Acheron and they start to go around Cape Horn. Wow. Anybody want to pontificate on that?
Kind of amazing they could even survive it.
The first time I saw this film, I don't know why I relate it to this, but that scene was like the ultimate haunted house. I mean, it was the scariest thing you could probably ever go through. First of all, the sound. I do bring up the sound later on, talking about just how the sound really amplified the movie. But the sound in that particular scene, just the wind, and I can't even describe it. I was floored by that scene, and not only that, but the cinematography and how they filmed it. I mean, of course, it was all faked, but it sure didn't look it to me.
Yeah, it reminded me of a film I saw about the Shackleton expedition.
Oh, okay.
And the scenes out of that, and it was like a flashback to that documentary as well.
It was a documentary.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, the one I saw relied on film and photos that had been taken during the Shackleton expedition.
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, but the appearance of the ship looked very much like what I recalled from seeing in that documentary. And I thought, how the hell you survive that when you aren't even on land or anything, or on a glacier or whatever? There's nothing around you. It's just water, and cold water at that.
Mm.
Yeah, I read Moby Dick not long ago, and so all of the whalers, it's roughly the same time period. All the whalers go around Africa because it is much less dangerous. So the fact that those two ships are going around the Cape Horn, when they got back home, they were probably like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to kill yourself?" Because nobody did that. They did, every whaling ship, they started, to whale in, off the coast of Russia, they would go around Africa from Massachusetts. So that was the normal route. So going around, around South America, around Cape Horn, nobody did it. It was just considered too crazy. So, yeah, that's the part of
They just should have gone through the Panama. They just should have gone through the Panama Canal. That's.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But speaking of Moby Dick, one of the thoughts I had when I was watching the movie was how many aspects of it reminded me of other movies that I've seen, and including one that we had last month, Red October. But the main thing about the Moby Dick, the scenes with the water, the waves, the storms, and so on, reminded me of scenes from the movie The Perfect Storm, and also from the movie In the Heart of the Sea, which is based on the story of the Essex, which was the basis for Moby Dick. I mean, both of those films have scenes that you almost get seasick watching them, like you could with this one.
Yeah, I thought the visuals struck me, but the sound, it really did sound like ghosts coming through the sails instead of just wind. It was just so eerie, and I'm so thankful that I wasn't born in that age and didn't have to sail during that age. I didn't sail at all, but especially during that stage. I didn't talk at all in my questions about the one sailor getting thrown overboard with the rigging when the small mast breaks. because, well, and I don't want to say because Holland wouldn't go up there. If Holland went up there, it wouldn't have made a difference. He would have landed in the sea as well on the rigging. I don't think going up would have made a difference. But this is just one more instance where Holland is showing the crew that he is not a reliable leader. And it ultimately turns out in Holland's suicide, as Lisa mentioned earlier. But we do see a couple scenes where Captain Aubrey and Stephen are talking about this. Captain Aubrey does get a chance to talk to Holland, and then Aubrey and Stephen get to talk about the situation as well. Stephen is certainly very sympathetic to Holland. Aubrey is not. Do you think Aubrey was maybe complicit in Holland's suicide? Or maybe not complicit, but
I think as a commander, he could have handled things differently with Hallam. Because the scene where they're calling noon, Aubrey is running the class and Hallam is in it. Hallam was 30 years old. He could have, he's been a midshipman long enough that he could have said, all right, you can teach this class and we can do this other stuff and you can get somebody to call noon. So, and if he wasn't capable of doing that, then he should have just drummed him out. Because dropped him off at Brazil and said, well, it's been nice sailing with you. you can get home from here.
Put you on guard in Tortuga.
Yeah. I mean, if he wasn't capable as a midshipman at 30, what was he doing on the ship? I think that's so to that point, and at the same time, he's giving Blakely and the guy that went out on the raft. They're getting all of this like special duties and kind of advancement, and Hallam's not getting it. So a 14-year-old and probably an 18-year-old are moving ahead of a 30-year-old. So
which begs the question, why did they even accept him as a member of the crew in the first place? But I guess if they wouldn't, then we wouldn't have part of the storyline, right?
Yeah.
Did the ship's commanders have the option of choosing the crew?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Their crew, yes. Typically, you were allowed to not so much choose, but accept or decline the higher positions like sailing master, like your second lieutenant, some of your midshipmen. The crew, though, absolutely. You definitely, you want a good sailing master. You want the guys who were down below in the initial scene, shoring up the holes in the ship so it doesn't sink. Woodworkers, woods craftsmen, things like that. You want the most experienced people you can get. So there's definitely, I don't want to say a fight for those, but they certainly are a prized commodity, and you can pick and choose for sure.
And when they picked up the whalers, at the end when the other guys getting ready to leave with the Acheron, he recommends Mr. Hogg, who was the head of the whaling ship, to be his sailing master. So he definitely has a good picture of who's a good sailor and who isn't.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree, and that's a good pickup too. Being choosing like that at the end of the film. Down about 10 minutes. Let's talk briefly about the final scene. As Jose pointed out when we were talking about whether we like the film or not, Jose brought up the phasmid, the stick insect that disguises itself. You're bringing your dog into play. I might bring mine in over here. He's laying over here, not very pleased with me because I'm not paying attention to him. And so they are able to disguise themselves as a whaler to lure the French ship in. And before I move any further, Jose, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, but it was not about what you were talking, but there was thing that really took my attention. That is when the battle has finished, and there are all of these dead people that is need to be disposed in the ocean, One of I think that there are two or three corpses that are covered by the flag, the England flag,
Mhm.
and we don't see the bodies falling to the sea because it's the flag that is covering them. It really took my attention. The director took this detail to not let us see the bodies falling, but just the flag. That's all.
Yeah, and this was a pretty common practice. You know, once these sailors had died, especially during this time, it's still a common practice today. You can bring people back, but you do occasionally see burials at sea like that. And it's because once the sailor is dead, you have basically taken care of their body. You know, you've cleaned them, you've put them in their hammock, you've sewn it up. Um, that's like basically being in your coffin. And nobody goes and opens up a coffin to rebury you. You know, once you're in your coffin, you stay in your coffin. And so that's kind of like the practice that they had back then. That's why you don't see the bodies. They're basically put in their coffin, which is their hammock. They're draped with their country's flag. And then when it comes time, yeah, they just dump them right over. And so the last time you actually see them is when they're being sewn up into their hammock. And it's just kind of like a burial on land is what they're trying to replicate there. And speaking of dead people, at the end of the film, after the battle between Acheron and the Surprise, which they surprised them, were you surprised, no pun intended, to see so many main characters not survive to the end of the film?
No.
All right, Chris?
I just figure, I mean, given the ferocity of the battle, the way the cannonballs just splintered and destroyed the ships themselves without any rhyme or reason in terms of, you know, it didn't seem like, you know, just hit the ship wherever it hits. Eventually some of the lead characters are going to have to die, or else it just wouldn't have been, in my view, it wouldn't have been realistic.
No, that's fair. Anybody else got a take on that?
No, I was just anticipating some because they were all in there and everything was crazy. I was actually thinking, who's gonna die? Somebody's gonna die.
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure somebody's going to go, right? I was kind of surprised just to see so many main characters. You know, you have or Lieutenant Colony. That was kind of a heartbreaker. I liked his character throughout the film. The sailing master, he gets shot straight in the head. I think it,
But
not
it
that I think
kinda
it was cool,
showed-
but I like the visual of him laying there at the end with all the other bodies. He's got that big hole in his head. I was just like, man, that would
But they
stink.
were the ship. They were a good team. They were a good crew together. And then they lost so many at that time, and it was a collective grief that they, sewed them all up and had them sitting there, and then at the at sea burial as this whole group. So it was a nice culmination of the teamwork. I mean, although we're losing people, it was still a collective. It was a collective reverence.
And then lastly, just real quick, what did you guys think about the two musical selections that Aubrey and Steven got to play throughout the film? Did you like that, or did you not like that?
I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it. I thought it matched the movie well. I thought it was good for the parts of the movie. I liked it.
I thought
oh yeah, it helped kind of distinguish it put the officers in a different class than the crew. So that was interesting to see, because they're, Stephen and Aubrey are sitting there playing music, contemporary music from Italy. And a selection, a piece from Bach, I think it was, or maybe Mozart, somebody. And the rest of the crew is just singing, their sea shanties.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does distinguish them, and I always thought it was a nice touch to the film, especially the last one. I like the last one. when they kind of rock out a little bit, they put their bows down and just start plucking away. I actually went and looked at a couple videos from some orchestras who do perform that last song. And I don't know who got it from who, or maybe it was just this way the whole time. I think that piece was written in like the early 1800s, maybe late 1700s, and I cannot produce the Italian composer's name. But it seems like every video that I've seen of orchestras playing this, they do the exact same thing. They put their bow down, they just pick up their instrument, start plucking away like Jimi Hendrix. And I just, you know, that's just kind of cool to see from serious classical music.
I thought the other thing it did was, in addition to showing the difference between the crew and the officers, I thought it was an interesting way in which they would decompress from all because it seemed to be something that it seemed relaxing to them in a way that they probably couldn't have gotten it any other way.
As a drummer, I can tell you there's nothing better than coming home from work and just sitting behind your kit for 20 minutes and banging out all that aggression. It is very relaxing. It is a great way to decompress. Music does wonders to people. Side note, Russell Crowe actually learned to play the violin for this film. He says that's the hardest thing he's ever had to do in his entire life. He's never experienced anything so difficult as learning how to play the violin for this film. And he still plays today. He fell in love with the instrument.
It was also a tie-in for their friendship.
I'm sorry?
It was just another tie-in for their friendship.
Yeah, which definitely saw some ups and downs throughout the film, right? But, you know, good friends, they survive those sorts of things and they stick through thick and thin and hopefully come out clean on the other end, which Stephen and Captain Aubrey did during this film.
Now, my mother had a degree in violin from Eastman School of Music.
Holy smokes.
And she tried to, yes.
Wow.
She actually had a joint degree in violin and voice. Anyway, apparently she was the first one to ever get a double degree. Who knew? But in any event, she tried to teach me the violin. I could never get the hang of it. Just, and part of it I think might have been fat fingers or whatever. I don't know. But I switched
As a
over.
drummer, I've always wanted to play a string instrument, and I'm sure guitar players are always like, "Oh, I really love to play the drums." I've never even come close to being able to even play "Mary Had a Little Lamb" on a guitar, much less anything else.
Okay,
I'm right there with you, Chris.
I switched over to
real quick because I just saw the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band on Wednesday. They're on their final tour. They've been playing for almost 60 years. Oh my gosh, the talent is unbelievable. It is unbelievable on all of the instruments. So I think they're coming to La Crosse and another place, so you might want to look out for them. Very good show.
I appreciate that, Lisa. I don't know about anybody else, but that's not my cup of tea. I need something a little bit more harder in a mosh pit.
Yeah, I switched over to trombone after my failure at the violin, and fortunately, it got me into an army band, so I didn't have to go anywhere else.
There's some puffy lips, though, Chris. Puffy lips.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah.
So we are running out of time. Of course, the last question I always ask every single event is, who was your favorite character or actor and why? I will start at the very end this time and work back toward you, Chris. Jose, who is your favorite character and why?
Maybe the doctor, because of all the development he has. When he's also successful in operating these old men in the head.
And he's kind of the voice of reason too, isn't he? To a certain degree. But you know, he's kind of there to make sure that everybody, no pun intended, everybody maintains an even keel, particularly Captain Aubrey. So yeah, and you know, how can you not like that character? Paul Bettany plays him to a T. That's a fantastic character. You know, you read the book, you watch the movie, you can't tell the difference. They do so well with the characters in this film. Lisa, how about you?
I'm gonna go with the doctor and I'm gonna go with the relationship, the doctor and the boy, because I think that was a great relationship developed. I mean, he did have to take his arm, but he saved his life, and he took on the little boy took on a great interest in what he had to teach him, and he wasn't really intently teaching him. They just kind of developed a good relationship. I appreciated that.
He did seem to be, for lack of a better term, a father figure to him, didn't he? Now, Steve, how about you?
I have to go with Blakely. Because the first scene of the movie, Will's waking him up because he fell asleep on the deck during his watch, and then kind of you see him kind of get this interest with the doctor, obviously, but by the end he's when they see the ship, the Acheron, on the Galapagos Island, and they're trucking back, he's the one that's making the decisions. And we gotta leave the cages. The only thing that the doctor kind of says, can you open them at least?
Thank
Because
goodness for
they
that.
know because they know they have to get back. Otherwise, if the Acheron catches the crew off the ship, they're dead.
Oh yeah.
So, and then finally, when he's in command on the ship, he's sending he's using the deck guns to fire across at the Acheron, at the French troops, or the French sailors, and then also the saving the ship at the end, not just shooting at the cannons to knock them out, but also getting everybody that's on the deck, like, get armed, get under, we got to go across, we got to stop them from blowing us up. He basically saves the ship.
Very Nelson-esque, right?
Yeah.
Chris?
I like two of them. Russell Crowe, because in part you can't have the film without him. And I thought he carried off that character well. I'm not a real Russell Crowe fan, but I thought he did a nice job with this character. He was direct with the crew. They respected him, and you could see why. I thought he made the character. He made you understand why the character would be respected and why he was called Lucky Jack. And then Bettany too, because I thought he was the counterweight to Crowe, and it was basically kind of a Greek chorus in the movie. Sort of standing in the background there and reminding people about what other things that were at stake beyond simply the honor or the duty.
So you have Aubrey and Stephen. You have that duo, and Lisa had Stephen and Blakely, that duo. So that's cool. We got two different duos going on here, and I like the choices both ways. I'll be the odd duck out. Of course, I liked Stephen's character. I liked Captain Aubrey's character. I really like the sailing master, especially when they're dining. He's just a jolly old man. But I really like oh, good grief, Pullings, Lieutenant Pullings. I think James D'Arcy did a great job in that role. Even more so as a more minor character, but I think he did a great job in that role. I think the character that he portrayed, the development that he did with him, was really great. He got promoted at the end to captain. And keep in mind that very last scene when they do give Captain Pulling command of the Acheron to take it to Valparaiso, and the Surprise is going to go do something else. Because principal photography on Master and Commander 2, with any luck at all, will be starting this year. So maybe by 2027, we'll have a Master and Commander 2. Once again, based off the Patrick O'Brian books, this is a pet project of Russell Crowe. He's been trying to get this off the ground for years, and he just may have done it. He has a script. He's shopping it around right now. So hopefully, somebody will pick that up rather soon, and we might see principal photography starting before the summer's in, which I think would be great if they do it correctly. But as we all know, movie number 2s typically aren't as good, and sometimes even very not depressing, but Yeah, rubbish. Sorry, go ahead, Steve. You had a comment?
Oh yeah, I'm just kind of wondering if they're gonna flesh out Stephen a little bit more. He's supposed to be an intelligence officer, and that's what you get to see at the end, where he's like, "Oh yes, their doctor died, blah blah, so long, this X number of months ago." That's one part of the film that they don't really follow through with, but I know that's something that's in the books. Is that
Stephen?
Yes, Stephen is an intelligence officer. He deals with this. He deals with he's got his own set of orders on the ship.
Well, I have to go take back and look and go back and take a look at that. I don't recall that. I always
But
just remember him being the Irish doctor. Huh.
Yeah, but yes,
Okay.
at the end, he's that's where they figure out. Oh yeah, their doctor died months ago, and it's like
Huh.
that
I'll
their
have to go back
doctor
and take
gave
a
me
look
the
at it. It's been
captain's
a- it's-
sword.
It's been a good decade since I've read them. So I have
Yeah.
to go back and look. Okay, so thanks
can
for
I just-
joining us tonight. Oh, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to mention that. I don't know what you think about this, but I thought there were some parallels between this movie and the movie in Red October in a couple of respects. One had to do with the technology, where Aubrey talks about the modern age we live in, and he holds up that. And in Red October, you've got the technology, which is an issue in the Red October itself. And the second thing was about the fog that was used to disguise the surprise, and in other respects the Acheron. And what you have in Red October is the use of the canyons to basically kind of disguise where Red October is.
Yeah, he's running through the Red Route 1.
Yeah, and so I just thought it was kind of interesting. Back to back, we've had a couple of movies dealing with technology in significant ways.
That is an interesting point. That will not play a factor in the next movie we're going to watch, though.
Right.
For May, we have A Few Good Men. That's the film we're going to be watching. Obviously, Jack Nicholson. You can't handle the truth. We got Tom Cruise, Demi Moore, Christopher Guest. Just a whole host of fantastic.
Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh yeah, and Kevin Bacon as well. Don't forget Kevin Bacon. So yeah, that should be another good film. And then for July, just so everybody has this on their radar, I don't think in fact, I know I haven't done this yet. July, we have a nice 4th of July film. Independence
Day.
So I am trying to update my movies to more modern movies. I realize I like to go back to the old black and white World War II films. I do appreciate everybody's suggestions. I'm trying to take those into consideration and make myself a little more modern and updated as I'm going through and choosing these films. So, but in May we have A Few Good Men. So I hope to see everybody then. Until then,